Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today in Maria's Kitchen, where we're going to show you how to make Irish soda bread. But first, I want to wish everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day. And I wanted to let you know a little bit about this holiday. St. Patrick is the patron saint of Ireland. And when I always thought of St. Patrick's Day, I always thought this was a day where Americans can celebrate, wear green, eat Irish food, and have fun. And it turns out that St. Patrick's Day is more American than I realized because the first people that actually started the celebration that we know were the Irish immigrants in the United States. And so they do celebrate St. Patrick's Day in Ireland now. But before our Irish immigrants started the parades and the parties and all that goes with it, it was actually more of a religious holiday. And the March 17th is the anniversary of the death of St. Patrick. And St. Patrick was an interesting man because he was not Irish. He was actually a slave that was kidnapped and brought to Ireland when he was 16. And he escaped and he came back to Ireland and stayed, which I thought was interesting. But he was actually a slave from when Britain was overtaken by Rome, when Rome conquered Britain, which they call Roman Britain, which I had to learn too. So there's like a lot of history there that's really fascinating about St. Patrick and his life, and then kind of how it evolved into this holiday. And so one thing I wanted to explain too is Irish soda bread. I had never made before, never knew the origins of it, and it actually is very American because it was the Native Americans who were the ones that discovered how to make bread and how to make bread rise without using yeast. And they were able to make it with something called potash, and that is basically ashes that are soaked, and then you use that watery ash to make bread, and it will rise. And it just sort of, I never knew that the Native Americans did that, and it really worked with a lot of different tribes throughout our country with different types of bread. And so one of the breads that you can use it would be, of course, cornbread and corn tortillas. And then they even used it in peaky bread and other things. So it's kind of neat to see that Native Americans actually were the ones that discovered this process of how you can make bread without yeast. And so the reason why it became an actual Irish dish is because of what in Ireland they call the An Gorta Mór, which is the Great Hunger, which, as we know, is the Irish potato famine. And the Irish potato famine was in the early and mid 1800s, and there was a fungus that destroyed potato crops across the nation. And potatoes had been the main crop for a majority of the population for generations and for millions of families in Ireland. And they were pretty much the only source of food. So a lot of people suffered during the Great Famine, and we lost over 1 million people in Ireland when this happened. And over 2 million ended up immigrating to other countries, including the United States, of course. My great-grandmother was one of them. So it's kind of neat that they found a way with soda bread to create ease in the nation for all the hunger pains and starvation. This helped sustain a lot of people, was the Irish soda bread when they used that process. And it worked really well with their soft wheat crop because it was a different type of wheat that for some reason soda really helped make it rise with the bread and give them something to eat. So the soda bread, Irish soda bread, the key to it, they say, is the buttermilk also, not just the soda, but you want really cold buttermilk, and it's the buttermilk and the soda together that help rise your bread. And so that is one way that you can make it. If you don't have buttermilk, you can let your milk, you can actually make your milk sour with vinegar. And so if you wanted to do that, you could try that. But if you've never baked with buttermilk before, it is really easy and it tastes great. And then if you have any leftovers, you could always make yourself some buttermilk pancakes. So I got this recipe, and the recipe comes from one of our library books. And I'm going to show you what that book looks like here. It's a book that we have in our system that's electronic. So it is called Irish Puddings, Tarts, Crumbles, and Fools, 80 Glorious Desserts. And it's written by Margaret Johnson. And this book has a ton of wonderful recipes, and you can actually have, you can access this book through Overdrive, through Freeing, and through your Kindle. So that is one way. Those are 3 different ways you can access this book. And it has a lot of really fun recipes in there. But I saw the soda bread recipe, and I thought, that's what I want to make for you today. And so when I made it, this was actually my first attempt of making it. And I want to show you, it turned out pretty easy. It also turned out really good. And so I hope you try this at home because it was a lot of fun to make. So I'm going to share with you this video of how I started making the bread. And I'm going to go ahead and read with you. That is 4 cups of flour, 3 tablespoons of sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And you're going to sift all of your dry ingredients. Now, I don't actually have a sifter, and so I ended up just using a fork and using that to stir all of those dry ingredients together. And so one thing, after you finish mixing all that together, you're going to want to add 4 tablespoons of cold butter. And I did use the Kerrygold Irish butter because why not? It's St. Patrick's Day. And you cut it into pieces, and then you're just going to mix that into your dry ingredients. And in the book, the recipe wants you to do this in a processor, food processor, but I don't have a food processor, so I just used my my fork, my spoon, and then my hands, and it worked out fine. One thing is the wet ingredients is going to be 1 large egg beaten and 2 cups of buttermilk. And then you are going to add a cup of golden raisins and 3 tablespoons of caraway seeds. And really, definitely get the raisins and the caraway seeds because those made it really fun, really delicious, and it was super easy. But I would do it differently next time, and I think I would add my raisins and my caraway seeds before I added the wet ingredients. I don't know. It just seemed like it would have been able to probably mixed better. The caraway seeds would have mixed better probably. And so would the currants. And then that's where I'm putting the buttermilk in there. And then you're also going to have another egg that's beaten with a little bit of water in there or milk and just a tablespoon in your beaten egg. And that's what you're going to use on your loaves before you stick it in the oven. So I am just going to fast forward a little because you can see I am basically getting that dough all together. And then the dough is supposed to look a little shaggy. And mine looks shaggy, doesn't it? And I didn't have a big enough cutting board, so I ended up cutting my dough in half. So I did 2 loaves instead of one big one. And here I'm just kneading my dough with a little bit of extra flour for my hands and the cutting board. And you don't want to overwork your dough because you want it to be nice and soft. And so now I'm adding the caraway seeds, and that gave it a really nice flavor. And then I'll be adding the currants next. I mean, you can, I'm going to try it differently next time when I make it and just throw those in before I throw in the wet ingredients and before I knead. But just to see if it makes a difference. But it worked out pretty well when I kneaded it with all that dry ingredient back in there. And it really tasted really well. It wasn't super sweet, and it wasn't, it really just tasted perfectly. So this is a dish that you can use with savory dishes, or you can just put butter on it and eat it, or you can add jam to it. If you have like a nice Irish stew, which would really taste really good today. And last St. Patrick's Day, I showed you how to make Irish stew on this same program. So you could always go back to look at that one on how I made the Irish stew. It was super good. And this is a great accompaniment to that as well. Or just a nice cup of tea, which I've been doing a lot of lately. So there's my loaf. And then I basically put it on a cookie tray with parchment paper underneath. And those are my 2 loaves. So now there's my egg, and I am going to basically just cover my loaves and the entire top of the loaf with the egg mixture. And that's going to give it a nice shine. Now, a lot of people were saying when I was looking this up, you should really cook this in a cast iron skillet, and it'll give it a nice crust. And then some people say you could even cook it in like a bread pan, like you would with banana bread. But then other people are saying I don't recommend doing the bread pan, either just like a flat pan like I have now, or in a cast iron skillet. I love cooking in cast iron, so I could see that as being a really good option for you. So there is all of that before I'm going to go ahead and exit out of that. And then I'm going to show you what it ended up looking like. And so you're going to actually have your oven at a certain temperature. And let's see, it was at 425, and I cooked it for 45 minutes. They say to cook it for 40 to 45 minutes at 425. And so that's what I did. And I think you can see it here. It looks nice and crusty. Nice and crusty. Now, one thing I forgot to show you, after you put the egg mixture, you're actually going to take your serrated knife and make like an X on top of your bread. Do you see that? Doesn't that look amazing? It was. It was really good. And so the reason why they put that X on top, which is kind of interesting, is there's different reasons why they do that. So first they say that it's actually the sign of the cross. And then some people say we have to do that. It's supposed to help make the bread cook more evenly. And like that's supposed to help it when you put that X on top. And then other people say it's actually so that you can just grab your 4 pieces and run. So maybe it was that. So because I could see why, because this is what I made 2 loaves with that recipe, and this is all that's left, is this one little piece from one of the X's that I had. And this, you can see it is got the currants, and the caraway seeds are in there as well. But it has a really nice crust and a really nice crust on the bottom as well. And this is definitely a keeper. I'm going to make it again because it was delicious and it's great with tea, and I love tea. So I hope you try out your Irish soda bread. It took me about 10 minutes to pull it all together. So that's really fast for bread. And you don't have to, because of the soda, you don't have to, wait for it to rise and then do everything all over again and then stick it in the oven. Very quick recipe. So I hope you enjoy your soda bread. Try it out with your Irish stew or any other dish that you're going to have today. And a happy St. Patrick's Day. Thank you for joining me. And we'll see you later.